Hey, what is up, folks? It's Will back once again for another fight card prediction. We're going to be breaking down UFC on ESPN 1, the first big card on big ESPN as Francis Ngannou faces off against the returning Cain Velasquez after more than 2 years out, I think it is. So really looking forward to seeing Cain Velasquez make his return to the UFC and see what kind of state of affairs he's in. He's a great addition again, obviously, to the heavyweight division, and looking forward to seeing what he's got. Coming from the great state of Arizona, my favorite, one of my favorite states in the whole of the America. Arizona is I lived there for a few years. Phoenix was a town I love going to, so looking forward to some of my friends who are actually going out to that. To a local card, which is awesome there. I've been speaking to them and been hitting them up about it. I've got one announcement to make. Last week, the UFC, not the UFC, Bellator got a TV deal done over here in the UK. Now, I've had people over the years asking me, why don't you do Bellator ones? And really, I've always wanted to have a passion for Bellator, and I still watch the fights, but it was hard. Like, you had to find really bad streams over here in the UK, and at 3, 4, 5 in the morning, I was not doing that. I was not putting time and effort into fights that I probably wasn't going to watch, or I wasn't as invested in. Last week, they announced they've got a TV deal done over here in the UK. So one of the announcements that I'm making for this is I'm going to start doing Bellator picks. Not going to be as in depth as the UFC ones, because I'm not going to be watching back catalogues of fights. It's going to be maybe a 10, 15-minute video, me giving my picks probably for the main card or a few scattered bouts throughout the card. And it's going to be starting off with MVP against Daly this weekend from Connecticut, I think it is. Travesty that fight's not even in the UK, which is crazy considering Bellator were in the UK last week. But yeah, I'm going to start doing Bellator picks as frequently as I can. I know there's one on Friday night. I'm not going to look into that. It's Karatonov against Matt Mitrione. I'm going to start with the Saturday card, and then obviously we've got the Sunday card. So 3 nights of fights, which is pretty awesome. But I'm going to start doing Bellator picks, so keep an eye out for that. Like, comment, subscribe. Getting like 15 to 20 new subs every card now, and it's awesome seeing new people appear on the chat down below with their picks and their opinions. And one other thing I'll say, I make my own picks. Don't take my picks as gospel. I've said this for years. Don't go out and bet your money that you earn on what I say. Some people do, and they'll come and say, congratulations, you won money, da-da-da-da-da. But if you go out there and you're losing money on my picks, do your own research. Honestly, if you love the fight game, go out and do your own research. Look into it. It's your money. If you want to come and speak to me regarding it, I'm always open. My DMs are open on Twitter. You send me an email, you'll find it on my channel somewhere here. I don't mind talking fights and maybe leading you in the right way, but don't take my picks as gospel. This is what I see, and I go with it. Just some people that are just a bit grimy with some of the things. Not that it annoys me. It's just like, dude, just do your own research. I've been saying for years, get your own people, get your own. I want more people to do videos. I think it's a good way of getting out there, speaking about the sport, getting your opinions across. Just get out there and do that, but don't start talking shit when your picks or your bets don't go wrong. That's what I see. I go with my picks. You live by them, you die by them. And last week, I got a couple underdogs wrong, and some people were coming at me for it. All the favourites won. It was when you looking back at it, it was a pretty easy card to kind of look at. A lot of favourites came through. In fact, all of them came through. And you got to take a couple of shots on dogs, because it's very frequent that all the favourites win fights. And that happened last week. But yeah, enough of the shit talking. Come and speak to me about it. Don't go off at me if your bets don't come in, because you've taken my advice on it. So yeah, pretty much. Let's enjoy the fights, talk about the fights, and just be fans. I'm a fan. I'm nothing more than a fan that puts my opinions out here. So let's just kind of be respectful of one another and kind of go from there. So we'll get started in this card, and I'm going to fly through these early fight pass fights because whoa. Starting off, Alexandra Albu against Emily Whitmire. Initially, this was one of the first fights I actually looked in the card because the betting lines seem now they're all getting released super early. All these cards are like, I know for Prague, I know they're not out next week, but ones in March are already out, and I think there's a couple of odds out for April fights, so they're releasing the odds really early. Just having a look at the odds, and I was like, whoa, Emily Whitmire is quite a big kind of underdog, and obviously the Alexandra Albu fight with Kylie Curran really kind of stuck in my head because it was sloppy, and I thought, oh, maybe Emily's got a chance here. You went back and watched probably, I think it was 5 fights I watched Emily Whitmire. I watched the 3 that I know of Alexandra Albu. Who knows what her actual record is? UFC are saying one thing, other places are saying another. And I thought Emily might have a chance here. When you look into it, I think Alexandra, I just don't know what Emily's going to do here. She's not going to take this girl down. If you attempt to take this girl down, she will throw you around and she will land in a top position. Kylie Curran tried to do that. She tried to be super aggressive and try and take her down. And she's just like really stacked. She's a really muscular, strong girl who is really hard to get to the ground and very hard to keep there as well. And she will power out, but she does gas a lot. When it comes to her striking, I do think she's got a lot of power, but her defensive traits are really bad as well. She gets hit a lot, but I think she's definitely the bigger power hitter here. Emily Whitmire doesn't really throw all that much. She did against Jimmie Moyle in a UFC win. Got a takedown in the 3rd round, established that and won the fight through that. I struggle to see her taking Alexandra Albu down. I see Alexandra hitting her with big shots and Emily like, I've never really been hit like this before, and that will kind of put her in her shell a little bit. So I'm going to pick Alexandra Albu. I actually think she'll win pretty comfortably. The way I would see her losing if she really gasses badly and Emily just dominates her. And I think she's a tough girl even when she's gassed to kind of really bully around because she's a big, stocky, strong girl for that division. Alexandra Albu, I could maybe see her getting a TKO or at some point in this fight, but I'll go decision. Majority of the women's fights kind of go to that, so I'll stick with that. Jessica Penne, Jodie Esquibel is up next. I'm picking Jodie Esquibel in this spot here. I really am. Jessica Penne, I thought she got cut from the UFC actually. I thought that after she got caught by, I think, USADA for something, I remember reading in it, but I've kind of forgot what it was. She had a ban. I think it was like a year, but it got cut down due to something. Coming off 3 losses in the UFC, Danielle Taylor, Jessica Andrade, Joanna Jędrzejczyk, and those 2 bigger name fighters, like I mentioned there, in Andrade and Joanna, absolutely beat the living hell out of Jessica Penne in that fight. In those fights, she took a lot of damage. She took it was just a big beatings, but again, it is against the strongest girls in the division. She was fighting for a title. She was fighting for a girl who's fighting for a UFC title next again, and she got bludgeoned. Danielle Taylor, close fight. I did think that Danielle Taylor's always hard to look good against because she doesn't engage. She sits at distance. Not sit at distance. She gets close in, but then she's kind of running off. She's hard to kind of keep in the one spot. She did get a takedown in that fight. Didn't really materialize to anything, and just kind of got outstruck. I agree with that decision with Danielle Taylor there. Jodie Esquibel, I mean, she's not really a UFC caliber fighter, but what she is and what I think she has more in her back pocket here is she's lighter on her feet. She's got better movement similar to what Danielle Taylor has. She's got far more volume, more strikes land per minute than what Jessica Penne does. I think if Jessica was to establish on the ground, I think that's where she could maybe control the fight, and I think that's where she will look to kind of take the fight, if I'm being honest with you. But I see Jodie being the quicker fighter in and out of the pocket, landing more strikes in the fight. And if she can stop it from getting taken down to the mat, then I think she wins the fight through her volume. Now, she's coming off 2 losses. I got burned last time. I'll mention that, actually. I got burned very, very badly against Jessica Aguilar. I think I can't remember what odds I bet her at. I thought it was getting really good odds, and she got I don't want to say beat up, but she just got outclassed by Jessica Aguilar, and Jessica Aguilar really doesn't. outclass kind of anybody these days. So that shows you the level where Jodie Esquibel is. But I like her in this fight. I'd rather take her. I think she's an underdog as well, which is kind of crazy. I don't know how Jessica Penne kind of established herself as a big favourite, or I think she's was it -160 I saw? Ooh, I don't know where you're getting that from. Plus 140, I think, on Jodie Esquibel. So if you want to bet on a low-level women's fight, which in a lot of times kind of goes to the underdog, Jodie Esquibel might not be a bad bet at all. I'm going to pick her to win via a unanimous decision, maybe a close split decision, but I do have her winning this fight without a shadow of a doubt there. Oh, well, this fight, I cannot believe this this fight's been put together. Renan Barao against Luke Sanders. Oof, wow, it's really, I don't want to say it's embarrassing. It's shocking. That's the word for it. Just how far Renan Barao has really fell down. 5 years ago, February, I think 2014, beat Uriah Faber, was at the top of his game, considered one of the pound-for-pound best. Got bested by TJ Dillashaw in a really dominant fashion. TJ ran through him. Since then, he's not looked the same. And he's 2 wins in that time in the last 5 years. Mitch Gagnon, Felipe Nova. Felipe Nova doesn't even fight anymore, and Mitch Gagnon, to be honest, doesn't fight. He just doesn't fight. He's injured. And I know his losses aren't to bad fighters. A couple of years ago, lost to TJ again, lost to Jeremy Stevens, lost to Aljo. Brian Kelly, I thought he's got an opportunity to win that fight. Lost that fight. Andre Ewell in Brazil. Andre Ewell is not a good fighter, and he lost. He faded so bad and lost a split decision in his own country against Andre Ewell. I'm not disrespecting Andre. I just don't think he's a UFC caliber fighter. And this is a former UFC champion he's facing. That shows you just how much the depletion of Renan Barao has been in the past 5 years. It's crazy. And if he loses this fight, there's no way the UFC keep him around. I'm sure he's probably making decent money being a former champion. And there's no real need to keep him around because he's not even... He starts off well, but then he fades. And he fades badly. And his defense is so bad. I thought going to American Top Team might improve him. You don't improve your cardio, your fight IQ, that it's just kind of been lost. Luke Sanders, terrible fight IQ in my opinion. I think he's another guy that's flattered to deceive in his UFC tenure. I thought he was a better fighter when he came into the UFC than he was. Looked great against Maximo Blanco. Then had in that Alcantara fight, had him hurt. Then got caught in a knee bar. Sukum Tath started off well in the first round, got knocked dead in the second. Patrick Williams, he was giving Patrick Williams every opportunity to win that fight there, and then lost to Hani Yahya, got caught with a heel hook. And that happens. Hani's crafty as anything. But now he's facing a former champion here. He's a -175 favourite, which is crazy. Don't bet this fight. Stay away, not unless you've got a... It might be... I've seen people say it's the last time to fade Renan Barao, and it could be in the UFC. But, wow, I'm staying well and truly away from this. Really don't have much interest in the fight. It's a crazy, crazy fight. I'm going to pick Luke Sanders to beat Renan Barao. But I really don't want anything to do with it. When it comes to the style matchup, I think the first round could be... I think Renan could maybe start off well, but as if Luke Sanders doesn't get hit with a shot, or gets hurt, or gets put in a bad position, then I see him coming through in 2 and 3 with more volume and more strikes kind of throughout the fight. So I'm going to pick Luke Sanders to win via decision in that one. Moving on to the ESPN prelims. Scott Holtzman against Nick Lentz. Good fight. I like what I'm seeing from Scott Holtzman right now. I think he is in the best spot he's ever been in his career. And he put on the performance of his career last time out. There's no doubt about it against Alan Patrick. Now, Alan Patrick is a really awkward guy to face. Very long, very kind of languid, a weird style. Scott Holtzman looked great with his striking. Like he really did. Very kind of dominant in that aspect. Got a takedown past the guard of Alan Nougat, who's, like I say, very crafty, very awkward, and very unorthodox, kind of to say the least. And got him out of there with some vicious elbows in the third round. But he just looked great. Stood his ground well. nice volume of strikes. Everything seemed to be very accurate. Picked his shots well, and great win. I mean, he's on a three fight win streak. Not against your biggest names, but Alan Patrick, like I say, keep saying it's very awkward. Darryl Horcher, journeyman pro, still tough to look good against, but Holtzman did well there. Michael McBride, I'm not even going to mention that guy. So yeah, Nick Lentz, veteran of the sport, been around a long time. He's went to Henry Hoof to improve his striking, which is something that has always been not great. Not the best, but not the worst. And it definitely seems to be improving. But in saying that, he is coming off a win over Gray Maynard. Can't really take too much of that. You can take that with a pinch of salt. Because Gray Maynard should have been out of the sport a few years ago after he probably beat Taruto. Sticking around too long in this game is going to have adverse effects on you. Wrestler by trade back in his early days. Could go back to that here, but Holtzman's a hard guy to take down as well. I don't think he's been taken down all that much in his UFC tenure. And saying that, he's probably facing the best guy that he has been. I think Darryl Horcher maybe took him down. In fact, Michael McBride even took him down, thinking of that now. I remember watching that. Josh Emmett took him down. I want to say a couple of times. I'm going back in about a week. Maybe even Drew Dober took him down. So maybe actually I've kind of overstated. I thought his takedown defense was actually better than I thought. So there could be opportunities there for Nick Lentz to take him down. Tough fight. I think it's a little bit of a tough fight. I am fairly confident in what I'm seeing in the progression of Scott Holtzman right now. I think Nick Lentz is just hard to look good against, and he doesn't really lose to many bad fighters. Lost to David Tamer, good fighter. Makhachev, he's ready and waiting for that top 15 of that UFC division. Charles Oliveira, Chad Mendes. So he doesn't lose to bad fighters. I see this being close. I see Scott being a little bit more of the fluid striker, just picking his shots well like he did. Don't want to say Nick will maybe start to deteriorate in the fight, but I think he might just take one too many shots here, and it might deter him a little bit from the game plan that he has. So I'm going to go Scott Holtzman via decision in that one there. Moving on, women's flyweight division, Ashlee Evans-Smith against Andrea Lee. This was supposed to be, I think, Andrea Lee against Lauren Murphy, and Lauren Murphy pulled out due to injury. And an interesting matchup. I've never been super high on Andrea Lee, but I actually do like watching her fight, and I've watched pretty much all of her fights, I believe, because I love watching Invicta. Actually, I think there's loads of cards. I think there's an Invicta card this weekend as well, which is awesome. 2 Bellator, 1 UFC, 1 Invicta. So fights everywhere. Coming off our UFC win over Veronica Macedo, I thought Veronica would have showed a little bit more in that fight, but I think she's shown what level she is at. But you go back, she's a kickboxer by trade, and she's got submission skills. And she's got a little bit of wrestling if she wants to mix that in to her fights. Like I say, in her first fight, she took the fight to the ground on a couple of occasions, passed guard on numerous occasions. I thought Veronica might be able to catch something, and there was a few instances in that fight where Veronica looked a little dangerous, but she was really kind of squashed by the overall kind of better fighting technique from Andrea Lee. Very, very light on her feet, very good leg kicks, pretty accurate striker as well. So yeah, she impressed me in her debut. It was against someone who's I don't think is overly great in Macedo. But I like this matchup for her. Ashlee Evans-Smith, I think she's prone to putting herself in bad spots, and it's shown in fights. Sarah Morris fight, she is dangerous, Sarah Morris, with her jiu-jitsu. It's really the only thing that she has, because her technique's bad, her striking's very bad, takedown defense is actually pretty bad as well, but she has got those big old thighs, and if you put your arm or a body part in those positions, she will catch you in something. But she did it as well with the Rocky Pennington way back with the bulldog choke. I thought she looked fairly decent in that first round, and then got a takedown, got back to the feet, and then she just got caught in a bulldog choke and got put to sleep. She's got a couple of wins. Murray Monroe, I think, is a good win to have. That was a very close fight. She also beat Veronica Macedo pretty viciously, actually. Took her down, landed some elbows, beat her ass up. And then Beck Rollins, she just outstruck from the get-go and was the better striker and the better fighter there. I think Andrea Lee's going to establish on the feet. I think she's going to take her down. I think if she can get a bit of dominance down there, she'll find a submission. So I'm going to pick Andrea Lee via sub. I'm going to go early or to mid-round number 3 there. I just think she'll mix it up well, and she'll win the fight through that. This is a great fight. This is a fight I'm actually really looking forward to. Benito Lopez, Manny Bermudez in the bantamweight division. Stacked bantamweight division. Yeah, good fight. Really looking forward to this one. Manny Bermudez is the man. Spent so much time with that guy in Liverpool last year when he was scheduled to face Davy Grant for the first time. And the fight got pulled. Davy got staph infection, I believe it was, and we were actually sat there and heard when the fight got pulled, and it's like really rough seeing a fighter who's obviously put in all that work and is starting a weight cut, or it was in the middle of their weight cut, and then he started eating chocolate bars, and I was like, "Is everything okay, Manny?" And he just went. So we knew the fight was off before it was even being released on Twitter and whatever on social media. So that was kind of disheartening. But from after that, he was fantastic. Spent so much time with us. Went out drinking. Him and his, I think his manager was there. The MMA Huddle, my podcast, we put a little get together, and he showed up. Spent the whole night there. We watched the Bellator fights. Aljo turned up as well. Just a fun night. It was a really good night. And Manny's just a really good dude. Had a bit too much to drink, I'm guessing, through that week in Liverpool. But then you seen what he's all about at UFC. I think it was Hamburg against Davy Grant. Ooh, he blew through that guy. And I've heard people say, "Oh, all he's got is jiu-jitsu and so on." Yeah, he didn't show it in that fight. He dropped him with a right hand, very, very quick right hand. And when he gets it to the ground, you can see how skilled he is. Very, very quick to move into different. Pass into different positions and look dominant in those positions. He got that triangle on very, very quickly. Davey tried with all his might to get him off and couldn't do it. Then you go back to, what was his first fight? Albert Morales. Both, it's a mutual opponent both guys have here. I thought he looked a little bit ropey. I think he looked a little bit nervous against Albert, who's been in there in the UFC, I think 3 or 4 times before then. He was clearly looking to get the fight to the ground because he thought, I think Albert was the better striker in that one, I thought at the time. But you can definitely see his skills getting better with the strikes that he's there. He just looks more fluent. Even the videos that I've seen going on Instagram and so on, he looks more fluent in his striking from when he came into the UFC. But once he got it to the ground, again, he showed that he was a level above Albert Morales in that take, and eventually got the submission in the second round. So it's pretty clear to see what Manny wants to do. He wants to get the fight to the ground because he, for the majority of the time, will be the better fighter, and that's where he feels most comfortable. Now, he can lose down there because I've watched amateur fights where he got submitted via triangle chokes as well. But we're going back a few years there. Undefeated guy, and he's facing another undefeated guy in the Golden Boy here, Benito Lopez, a Team Alpha Male, a guy that I've been looking into for a number of years. Coming out of that camp, I've just been a fan of Team Alpha Male for many years, so I hear about these guys before they go into the kind of big shows. And he himself coming off a very, very close decision win over Albert Morales. It was I think the strikes comparison was very close. He had a couple of sub attempts. I think he had a couple of passes in that fight. A bit of a wild guy. He loves to get in there and swing some bombs around. And it's just interesting to see with this because I think he's the better striker, but I just think he's wild and he leaves openings for counter strikes. Now, I don't know whether Manny's that guy yet to be a good counter puncher. But I think he's that wild that he might play into the game of Manny Bermudez a little bit, and Manny will find a takedown down there. Not that that's taken away from Benito Lopez, because I think he's got some skills down there himself. But I do see the more prominent guy down there as being Manny Bermudez. But looking at let me have a look at the betting odds in this one, because this one to me was a little bit off actually. So minus 285. I remember checking early on. Let me see. Manny Bermudez. Minus 230, he's came back to that. I don't think he should be any higher than minus 175. I think minus 175 is where he should be. So there's some, especially at plus 190 in Benito Lopez, I think there's value in there if you think he can win this fight. And I think he's got an opportunity to win the fight, but I feel more confident in picking Manny Bermudez. But as an underdog play, if you've got some money out there, riding on Benito Lopez, I don't think is a bad thing, but he might fight himself into bad positions. And I think against a guy like Manny, you have to be very careful, because you've seen in that Davy Grant fight, if you make the simplest of mistakes, he will find a way to get you out of there. I don't see it being like that. I see it being Benny being a little bit better on the feet, and I do see Manny getting it to the ground and being the more dominant guy down there, but struggling to find a submission. So I'm going to go Manny Bermudez to go to a decision. I'm going to pick him via a very close split decision, actually. So tough fight for me because I like both guys, but I'm going to pick Manny in that one there. And the main fight of the prelims here, great fight. Jimmie Rivera against the Funkmaster. Aljamain Sterling, really good bantamweight bout here. And I'm struggling with this pick a little bit. I really am. I think that I don't want to say. I've seen some people say that Jimmie Rivera was a little bit overhyped, and I disagree with that, because anybody that puts a win streak together like he did shows that the guy's a very competent fighter. And you've seen the fighters that he beat in the UFC as well. He fought very well in them. Pedro Munoz beat him via split. Pedro Munoz has got his biggest fight of his fighting life against Cody Garbrandt next month at UFC 235. Beat Uriah Faber, kind of dismantled him with leg kicks, really hurt him in that fight there. And it was just looking the better fight in that. But in saying that, Uriah Faber was kind of at the end of his tenure in that fight. Beat him up with leg kicks and just kind of outstruck Uriah. And then he went into the Thomas Almeida fight, very dangerous fight. Almeida's always a dangerous guy, but he's predominantly a striker, a very dangerous striker at that. But Jimmie held his own, hurt Thomas Almeida a few times, got a couple of takedowns at the right moments of those fights, looked dominant. And then he went on to face the killer of that division at the minute. There's no doubt about it. You cannot say anything other than Marlon Moraes is the guy in that division outside of the champion, and could soon be the champion of that division. He's been destroying dudes, and dudes that don't get taken out, he is taken out like very viciously as well. Followed that up with a UD over John Dodson. Fought just a very competent fight on the feet. But there is, to me, a little bit of concern over his chin. Now, I don't think that should really be much of a concern against Aljo, because Aljo's not known as a one-punch guy, getting you out of there, hurting you in those instances. He's just always been a funky guy with his strikes. I think he started to establish fighting at range a lot better, which I like, because he is a kind of long, languid guy, or can be. His kind of main skill set is getting the fight to the ground and being funky. That's what he is. He's the funk master, and he's always been a guy I've loved watching down in there, the ground, since the Johnny Eduardo submission back in the day. Brian Caraway had him in a little bit of trouble in that fight early, but then ultimately lost the fight. Rafael Assunção, I bet him in that fight to win via decision. I think he was plus 250. I thought I had it. Very close fight. Typical Rafael Assunção fight back then. Beat Tanquinho, beat Renan Barao, then got absolutely destroyed with that knee by Marlon Moraes, and then beat a couple of really good prospects in Brett Johns, where he used his wrestling, his overall striking, kept him at distance, kept him at bay, kept a great pace. Cody Stamen fight was a hard one for him. He got taken down a couple of times. There was some nice passes that he had in that fight, and then he caught him with a knee bar in that fight. I think it was the second. I think that was in the same card actually as Zabit. There was two in that card. Crazy finish, and took out a legit prospect in the second round. I've been thinking really hard in this fight, and Aljamain Sterling, I think, as an underdog, has a viable shot. But I'm just trying to think, is he going to outstrike Jimmie? Is he going to keep him at bay? Is he going to stick to a game plan of keeping it long and maybe try and getting takedowns? I don't think he's going to get Jimmie down. So then it's going to become a striking affair. And I think Jimmie's more than competent on the feet with his leg kicks and his combination striking. I'm going to pick Jimmie Rivera, but I'm going to pick him via a very close split decision. I think there's merit on Aljamain Sterling in this fight. And I think if you're looking for an underdog to bet, I don't know what the odds are on him right now, actually, in America. He's minus plus 130. I would kind of like more of that if I was to take a pop on him. But I am going to pick Jimmie Rivera via very, very, very close split decision. I can see that one being close. I don't see anybody getting blown out of the water in that one. Moving on to the main card, featherweight division, Andre Fili against Myles Jury. Close fight again. I never seem to get Myles Jury fights correct. I've always been a kind of little bit off because I always forget about him because you never really see him all that often. Kind of injury-plagued fighter. Seen him move to a few teams, moved to Arizona. He's moved back to San Diego. And he's coming off a knockout loss against Chad Mendes, which I thought he would come into that fight and last in that fight and just outstrike Chad Mendes. But Chad Mendes has always got that power option that can happen at any time, and he can hurt you at any time. And that's what happened. He got taken out in the first round. Before that, he beat Rick Glenn. Pretty competent performance against a guy who he's not fast. He's pretty slow. You can kind of see shots coming, so he could pick and prod at his shots a little bit more than he could. Like, he had to be a little bit more defensively sound than he was in the Chad Mendes fight. Completely outstruck him, took him down a few times, and just dominated him with his position in there. Mike De La Torre took him out in the first round, but that was 2017, 2016. Like, to be fair, took him down, completely outstruck him, got the TKO in the first. I've always been a fan of Fili and Jury, actually. I think they're very kind of, I don't want to say they're similar fighters, but they're kind of in my head, I want to say that they're kind of similar fighters. They always, I don't want to say one of the same person, but I see them as being similar. But I see one guy kind of being a little bit better. Andre Fili, like your typical up and down fighter, kind of wins one, lose when. It's always been the way since he came in. Pretty low volume striker. I think sometimes his hands dip a little bit low, and you've seen him hurt with some shots in the past because of that. I think that's a part of his game that he's kind of showed up a little bit, not being as hittable as he kind of was in these earlier kind of days, because even like if you go back to the Hakran Diaz days, Hakran was hurting him with some shot, not hurting him, but he was finding clean shots in that fight. But his losses aren't bad losses at all. I actually think that he beat Michael Johnson. I bet Michael Johnson last time out to win that fight. And I scored it for Andre Fili. It was the same at the weekend there, Kai Kara France. I thought he lost that fight at the weekend. I bet Kai Kara France. But Michael Johnson, obviously a fast combination striker, landed the vast amount of strikes in that one, took him down, and Andre shown that his wrestling ability is actually pretty decent. Took Dennis Bermudez down 4 times and won a split decision. I thought it was a little bit more. I think his defense or his striking in that fight was a little bit off, but I think his ground game was enough to win him the fight there. Beat Artem Lobov. Takedowns was the name of the game in that one there. So he has takedowns there, but I just think that out of all those people that he's faced, that Myles Jury is a very, very dangerous guy on the ground. And it's not that we've seen it all too much, because, I mean, his last submission one was Chris Saunders, 2012. But I think he's got good position. I think he's got a kind of good brain for it. I've watched a couple of interviews with Dominic Cruz regarding Myles Jury. I know he's a teammate and he's going to speak highly of him. But he says that when he rolls with him, Jury is one of the best guys that he's ever rolled with. Just with his positioning and just he's a hard guy to kind of pin down. So again, I see this being a close fight, and I don't know, is Andre Fili going to come in here and want to take down Myles Jury? Is interesting. It's an interesting hard fight here. I think that actually Andre Fili is kind of live in this spot. But I just feel that the more talented fighter is Myles Jury. But I'm thinking from years ago when he beat Michael Johnson, ran through Diego Sanchez. I don't want to say ran through, but he was very dominant. Then he was obviously all hyped up against Cowboy, and Cowboy just shut him down. But again, that was 4 years ago. Charles Oliveira lost. Yeah, a little bit interesting in this fight. I'm kind of struggling a little bit. because I think that Myles Jury's better on the ground. I feel that this fight might go there and he might catch Fili, and Fili's been caught in submissions in the past as well. Godofredo Pepe caught him. Max Holloway obviously caught him, but and I do think that he has his chin exposed a little bit, which Yair caught him with. Yeah, I'm going to go Myles Jury. I think he actually might catch a submission. I'll go submission. Not super confident, honestly, but I'll go Myles Jury, a submission at some point in that fight there. Good fight up next. Vicente Luque against Bryan Bam Bam Barberena. Bam Bam's fighting out of Arizona, so this is a home gig for him. And he's probably got, outside the Leon Edwards fight they had, his toughest fight to date, in a guy who's very, very fundamentally sound and very, in many aspects of the game. We'll start with Barberena and his kind of UFC tenure. What he's a hard-nosed fight. He's a hard guy to face. You don't get this guy out of there. Thought he was a little bit unlucky against Charles Prez. I thought he won that fight. But these are the kind of fights that Bam Bam looks really good in when he's the heavy underdog. He was the heavy underdog in the Valley Alves fight, the Sage Northcutt fight, and went in there. I don't remember the odds on them, but I want to say, in fact, let me have a look at that, because I want to see what that's like, really heavy. So he closed plus 370 against Wally Alves down in Brazil. Plus 180 against Sage Northcutt, which was crazy when you think about that now. So the guy, he comes in these spots. He's very, very dangerous in spots like these where he's not being heavily favoured. But again, I think he's fighting the best fighter he's ever fought here in Vicente Luque. He is coming off a win over Jake Ellenberger. As soon as he hit Jake with any variant of a strike in that one, Jake really was hurting from the get-go. Gave a good performance against Leon Edwards. Just Leon's a better technical, more savvy fighter. So his UFC wins aren't great, to say the least. He's probably his best one is, oh Christ, who knows? Maybe Sage, maybe followed by Wally Alves, who knows? But when you move over to his opponent, he's a hard-nosed guy. Bam Bam's a hard-nosed guy. He's going to push the pace. He's going to try and do that. But when you look at Vicente Luque, it's a guy who's just completely on the up in the spot of his life. He's just been... He looks great. He looks like he's that top 10 welterweight fighter, and that's a hard division to get into that, even the rankings on that one. But he needs a step up in competition, in my opinion, because the one time that he made a big step up against the top 10 guy in Leon Edwards, he lost. It was in London. I don't think he fought his best fight in that one. There was talks, there was a bad weight cut, there was this, there was that. But super dangerous in so many aspects of the game. We've seen him win fights in the UFC via submission. We've seen one hitter quitter knockouts like the Jalen Turner one, the Bilal Muhammad one. Then we've seen the submissions of Nico Price, of Herrera, Haider Hassan back in 2015, whenever that was. But he's made a big jump in his fight game since he's first lost in the UFC to Michael Graves. But he deserves a step up, in my opinion. Nico Price, I'll always have him over a guy like that. Charles Prez knocked him out stiff in the first, big vicious knockout. And then Jalen Turner, like I said last week, Jalen Turner had no right whatsoever being in there against Vicente Luque in a couple of weeks' notice. I like him against Bam Bam. I think that he will catch him with strikes, and I think once they go at the ground, I think he's just a bit of a level above there. He's got a beautiful, beautiful chokes. I think he will catch him with a Darce at some point in this fight. So I've got Vicente Luque pretty comfortably over Bryan Bam Bam Barberena, but Barberena kind of relishes in these spots, so just be careful if you're parlaying him up. Moving on, featherweight division, Alex Caceres against Kron Gracie. Now, I put out a tweet last night saying I think Alex Caceres has got more of a shot than what people are letting on. That's all I said. And then the barrage I got from people was crazy. He's going to sub him in a minute. Alex Caceres shouldn't have been there with Kron Gracie. I could go on with some of the the viral that I kind of got from the viral of what I got last night. It was pretty crazy. And all I said was, I think he has an opportunity here. And when I'm saying that, we've got a newcomer to the UFC in Kron Gracie. Now, we all know about the Gracie heritage legacy that they've got there. They're the guys that brought jiu-jitsu into the UFC, kind of the whole world to see, through Helio Gracie and Hoist Gracie, obviously. And then we've had various Gracies throughout the years come into the UFC, but they don't win fights in the UFC, which is crazy. And this was something last night before I did the MMA Huddle podcast. I was sat there and I was like, who was the last guy to win a UFC fight? Because I was certain it wasn't Hoist Gracie. And then I went back and I was like, Hodger Gracie, Henzo Gracie, Hollis Gracie. And I'm like, oh my God, it's nearly 25 years since a Gracie last won in the UFC. I was like, I thought that was wrong. And I asked various people, and like, no, you're right. It is Hoist Gracie winning away back in I think it was December 1994. So just over 24 years. Crazy. I've known about the name, obviously, Kron Gracie. He's the son of Rickson Gracie. Great documentary, Choke, that if you've never watched, go out and watch that. And you all know what you're going to get from Kron Gracie. A very decorated BJJ guy. And it was actually awesome going back and watching a lot of jiu-jitsu matchups. It's something that I don't do enough of, and I want to do more. It's just looking in jiu-jitsu, because it's a great, beautiful sport to get in and just watch the variances. And I think I ended up watching Quintet, and that was pretty cool as well. But if you've never seen Kron Gracie, I'll go and watch the Gary Tonin fight from 2013. About what a great jiu-jitsu bout that was, really was. I watched his fights with Tovio Souza, who else? Victor Estima was one of them. But Benil Dariush was another one. Gilbert Burns, I think, way back in the day, was another one. So Marcelo Garcia, that was another one that I watched. So it's been actually a privilege to watch Kron Gracie. Then you move over to MMA, and he's obviously fought out of Risen. I'm not really going to count his first two fights. They are on YouTube there. You can go and watch them. He's just a level above those guys there. Hideo Tokoro was a step up, but a kind of 500 fighter. He was 38, I think, at the time when they fought. He came out in that fight. What I will say about Kron, that he obviously works his boxing with the Diaz brothers, and threw some big left hands there, but he kind of uses it just to kind of get in close clinch, flop to his back, and looks to take it to the ground. And in that fight, he did that and moved to positions. What I like about Kron Gracie, and there's different variants of BJJ guys. So there's people like Charles Oliveira, which is always great to watch. But I like the people that kind of technically you see them work for the submission, kind of like a Gunnar Nelson. I always think about Gunnar Nelson in this aspect, because he kind of walks away. He'll hit body shots, he'll hit your leg just to get the slightest opening to move into the position where he can catch a submission. Kron Gracie kind of does that as well. But kind of where I'm going about Alex Caceres potentially having a shot here is because Tokoro's been submitted a number of times, but he did well. He reversed position a few times, got back to his feet, stupidly entered back into the ground game of Kron Gracie and got made to pay for it. With I think it was 15 seconds left of the first round, and Risen, they have 10-minute first rounds. So he lasted 9 minutes. And I was just thinking, well, if Alex Caceres can maybe last 9 minutes, then who knows what Kron Gracie is like in the third round of an actual kind of real kind of fight. But then again, when you look at Kron Gracie, you see the skills the guy has on the ground. Then you look at Alex Caceres, he gets taken down a lot. He fights to the level of his opposition, I think, down to the levels. And he's got some questionable losses, and he's pretty much a 500 UFC fighter. He loses a lot of fights. I think this is going to be close to his 20th fight in the UFC, so he's lost a lot, he's won a lot, and his wins aren't great, being honest. I think his best performance was actually Cole Miller at UFC 199. I thought he gave a spirit performance against Yair Rodriguez. Hit Yair with some good striking, so he's awkward. But if you look through a majority of his fights, he gets taken down a lot. Martin Bravo was taking him down last time. if you give Kron Gracie the opportunity to take this fight to the ground, he's going to work on you down there. And I think that Bruce Leroy will give him opportunities to do that. It's whether he can survive the Kron Gracie, just the jiu-jitsu that he has, that he works for. He'll find a way if you stay down there long enough. But I'm trying to play the other side where I'm not trying to write off Alex Caceres because so many people are doing it. I don't want to do that. I'm not that type of guy. But ultimately, you kind of have to go with Kron Gracie in this, but I don't see how you could be super confident in Alex Caceres because he makes mistakes, and if he makes mistakes with this guy and he gets taken down, even if he tangles up with this guy, he's going to go to his back. He will eventually find a submission, in my opinion. So I'm going to pick Kron Gracie to win via submission in the mid part of this fight. I just think he might initially survive the jiu-jitsu flurries of Kron Gracie, but eventually I think we see a Gracie finally winning the UFC in a long time via submission. But he's still a young fighter. He's only 4-0, and I'm looking forward to see if we see any maybe extra out of his game. I doubt it, but yeah. And I might take some shit for this. I don't think if you're confident in a shot on Alex Caceres, which you really shouldn't be, I think you want more for your money at plus 280 as he is right now. You maybe want plus 400 or whatever. Then it might be just a little shot on him, but it wouldn't be the worst play in the world in my opinion. But I would rather keep my money in my pocket, especially with a guy who is as good as Kron is on the ground. So yeah, I'm going to go Kron Gracie here via submission. Could be a pretty good DraftKings play, but yeah, I'm going to pick Kron in that one there. Moving on, Cortney Casey against Cynthia Calvillo. Interesting fight here. I've tried to fade Cynthia in a few fights in a UFC tenure after initially, I think I caught her via submission in the very first fight against Amanda Bobby Cooper, and I got good odds on that. Obviously tried to fade her against Joanne Calderwood. Tried to fade her last time against Polyam Botelho, and looked great in that fight, to be honest with you. I thought she really put on a very good performance against Botelho, who I thought would have more on the ground for Calvillo, and it just showed that she really didn't. She got outstruck, she got taken down, she got passed easily, she got submitted easily, and that's where Cynthia Calvillo absolutely wants to be in her fights. I thought actually in the Joanne Calderwood, she showed that her striking was coming along. She's got some fast strikes. She's not a big hitter, but she's got enough there to kind of hold her own. I'm not sure she kind of has that in this fight with Cortney Casey, because she is quite long. She's a big gull for the division. She's very, very awkward. But when you look at all the people that Cynthia has fought, she's fought like I don't want to say white belts, but very low level belts in jiu-jitsu, where I think on reading that Cortney Casey's like a brown belt, so she's a little bit more advanced than especially what Jojo is, Pel Gonzalez, Amanda Bobby Cooper. She's definitely more advanced in the jiu-jitsu stages as they are. And her last UFC win, or her only submission win, Cortney Casey, is via submission over Randa Marcos, where she looked fairly decent in that fight. I think I picked her as an underdog actually in that one, which was quite cool. But yeah, I don't think Cynthia's going to want to stand on the feet and bang. I think she's going to want to initiate the striking to try and get in a clinch position, try and get a takedown, get a single leg. Someone like Cortney Casey is very viable to getting taken down. She was taken down. I think she was a little bit unlucky actually against Michelle Watterson, got taken down in that one. Eva Anja Hill last time took her out in a split decision win there. Jessica Aguilar took her down, but she absolutely beat the piss out of Jessica Aguilar, even off her back in that fight. Like I say, she's going to have a big advantage in... big advantage. I wouldn't say a big advantage in the striking. I think she has an advantage in the striking, but I think her grappling skills have a lot to be desired, to say the least. And I think once it goes to ground, I think Cynthia will find a way. I think either that she'll find a way, or Cortney Casey will get too aggressive where she'll leave herself open for a position where Cynthia will come in and get a submission at some point. So I'm going to pick Cynthia Calvillo. I'll go a second round submission in that one there. Co-main event of the night, James Vick against Paul Felder. Good matchup. initial matchup was made, I think, before Paul Felder got pulled off to face Mike Perry, I think it was. James Vick was facing Gaethje. And I've never really been a Paul Felder kind of guy. I think he's a decent fighter, but I think that's all he really is. A couple of good wins on his record, obviously. He's got Stevie Ray coming over to Scotland. That was a very dominant performance over Stevie. And I seen him in the weight cut that week. That was rough, man. I've never seen anything like it. A really tough weight cut for Paul Felder. I think he lost his dad, actually, not long before that. So it was quite an emotional one. Then he came over there and just starched Stevie Ray. And then Charles Oliveira put himself in some bad positions in that one there, but ultimately came through and made Charles Oliveira quit. And that's what you have to do against Charles. You have to be hard-nosed and you have to really get him. And he will. There is tendencies in him to quit fights. When there against Mike Perry, went up to 170, gave a pretty good performance of himself considering I think he snapped his arm as well, or his forearm in the middle of that fight, so he was fighting at a disadvantage for some of it. But I've never been super impressed with what I've seen from Paul Felder. I think that he's actually taken a lot of his time off to doing this commentating. He's saying that he's wanting to move into that, which is it's fair enough. You're not getting punched in the face, you're getting paid to do something else. Watch fights, analyse them, and so on. He's going to want to strike you and he's going to want to be the aggressor. That's what he's going to be. That's what he's always pretty much been. And then you've got someone in James Vick who's another monster for that division. I don't know how he makes the division. I've been watching some interviews with him saying that he kind of cheated on his diet last time out, took some I don't want to say shot. He did look bad fight week against Justin Gaethje, and obviously that fight didn't go his way. He talked a lot of smash to Justin Gaethje and ended up getting smashed pretty much inside the first minute of that fight, minute and a half. Talked a lot of shit and got absolutely whipped with a kind of a little flick of a left hand and an absolutely massive right hand, and he was out for, I mean, that was a massive knockout because I think he even went back over like 30, 40 seconds afterwards, and James Vick was trying to grapple with him, trying to take him down, which is crazy. And James Vick's always going to have that defense, the tall man's defense. He's always had it. Galeko Franca, you go back 2016, he was getting hit with shots. He leaves his chin in there. The Beneil Dariush one, he get hit with a big shot there and got knocked out in the first. But he is a really good, solid fighter as James Vick. I've cashed in him a few times. I think he's as an underdog, he's always a fairly decent play in certain matchups. I think I cashed him as an underdog against Joe Duffy. Great performance there. Francisco Trinaldo was a fight I took a lot of by watching this fight, because I think what he has to do is he has to keep a distance, use those teeps, fight long, and because the aggressor is going to be Paul Felder. He's going to want to initiate striking battles. I think if James Vick can stay really, if he can stay really, what's the word I'm looking for? Disciplined, keeping it at bay, keeping it long, picking his shots, fighting at length, and frustrate Paul Felder. Because I think Paul Felder can frustrate himself. You've seen in the Barboza fight way back in the day, he grimaces when he can't get his shots off, and he gets a little bit frustrated with himself. And James Vick, I think, is going to play that long game and look to do what he did in the Francisco Trinaldo fight, and that is fight long and look to just kind of keep him on the outside and win the fight from there. Like I said, Paul Felder is going to want to get aggressive in that one. I don't think he's going to want to get takedowns. I think that I don't think Felder's ground game's all that bad, but it's not very often that guy looks for takedowns. So I've got James Vick winning this one, maybe in a pretty boring fight, but he just needs to get back in the win column and establish himself back in the division again against that hard-nosed guy in Paul Felder. I've actually bet James Vick plus 125. I think it's, I don't know what his odds are now. I bet that on Saturday, I believe it was, or Sunday. He's minus 110 a piece now, actually. Wow, so Paul Felder's probably going to be the underdog very, very soon. So if you've got a preference in Paul Felder, which I'm sure a lot of you will, you'll get dog money within the next day or so, but by fight time, who knows what you're going to get. I just prefer James Vick. I'm not writing him off yet. I think he's a really good, solid fighter with good fundamentals, good boxing, dangerous with his long limbs with jiu-jitsu. I just think he can frustrate Paul Felder in this matchup and win via decision. So James Vick for the win there. And the main event of the night, we've got the Predator Francis Ngannou against the former UFC champion, heavyweight champion, and Cain Velasquez, coming back after that long layoff. An interesting fight, a really interesting fight. Initially, I was like, yep, love Francis Ngannou in this. And then, I don't know whether I forgot about Cain Velasquez a little bit, but you went back and watched just how big of a destroyer that guy was back in the day. Now, we're going back a long time since he was the destroyer. Oh, well, I'm not really saying that. The Travis Browne fight a couple of years ago, UFC 200, he destroyed Travis Browne in that aspect. But when you go back after he lost to Junior and he went back in that run where he beat Bigfoot, Junior Dos Santos twice, and in fact, he beat Bigfoot and GDS twice, gave GDS like a lot of punishment in those fights as well. 5th round knockout. 2 5th round, beat him via decision, a lot of punishment, beat him the second time, stopped him the 5th is what I'm trying to say there. Then a lot of people were super, it was a big event going down to UFC 188 against Fabrizio Verdum and try and unify that division, fighting for the belt, or he was fighting for the belt or whatever, and as that fight was going on, everybody's cardio okay, and it's going to have effect in this one. Verdum looked great, and then he started to get sloppy, very sloppy, and he shot initially and got away with it without getting choked. Second time he did it, Verdum knew what he was going to do, was absolutely all over it, and caught him via submission in the 3rd round there and won the belt. Came back against Travis Browne, like I said, and destroyed him. There is a couple of asterisks in this fight here because we don't know what he's like. He's saying, the interviews that I've watched, I think it was Ariel Helwani actually a few weeks ago. There was a couple this week that I've watched. He had injuries. He had a new addition to his family, so he wanted to take time off and actually watch him grow up in his first year of his life, which is pretty cool, being a young dad myself. But now he's coming back, but it's just like, is he rusty? Is it the old Cain that we know what it is? So there is some asterisks there, but we know if he shows up, he's got the kind of game plan to absolutely really go through Francis Ngannou, in my opinion. We've kind of seen the blueprint of beating Francis Ngannou, and that was Stipe Miocic come out there, avoid getting hit with the big shots, and that's easier said than done because the guy is an absolute monster with his speed, with his strength, with his power, and he's back. He seems to have got his confidence back, considering. I think it was actually Ariel Helwani's show earlier on. He's saying that he lost his confidence and he maybe got too ahead of himself. He thought he was bigger than what he is. I'm not even going to mention the Derek Lewis fight because it's absolute dog doo-doo. It's just a bad fight. I'm never watching that one ever again after the first time that I watched it. But then heavy underdog, I think he was a plus 200 underdog against Curtis Blades, which was a little crazy considering he beat him back in 2016, 15, 16, whenever that was in Croatia. And Curtis Blades didn't look out of place in that fight either. But he came out of there and absolutely, you could see, when you watch the fight back, just how wide his legs was. That guy was for not getting taken down, and he was just, as soon as Blades moved forward in any way whatsoever, was going to hit you with a big strike. And once that big strike lands, if he lands it, you're not going to survive with this guy because he's got so much power. And initially got the win via a knockout there and getting himself a big fight here against Cain, that if he wins this fight, he puts himself right in line for Daniel Cormier, puts himself right back into the kind of championship kind of steams, especially after that bad Derek Lewis fight where he looked like he was way off of even looking at another title shot again. But we know with Cain Velasquez, if he can come out here and he has that cardio like we all know that he has, he's fighting back in Arizona, which he went to university there. He's a legend of Arizona University out there. But if he can establish his kind of game plan like we know he can, he will tire out Francis Ngannou without a shadow of a doubt. If he gets him in any wrestling exchanges, he's going to be the stronger guy there. He's going to keep going. He's not going to give up. Cardio Cain. seen him, like, he can get numerous takedowns. I mean, Junior Dos Santos, he took down 11 or 12 times in the second fight, I should say. Took him down a couple of times, but just go. Never stops. Took Verdum obviously down a few times. That's what his game plan is going to be. He's going to want to tire Francis out, and he can absolutely do that. Initially, I was on Francis Ngannou. That's changed. I'm on Cain Velasquez. Hopefully, he's coming back full health and is ready to go. But I'm going to pick Cain Velasquez via TKO. Actually, round number 2. I think he's going to take over and stop him via ground and pound. So that's my picks there for UFC in Phoenix, Arizona, UFC on ESPN. I'll be back next week for Prague. That's a Sunday. This is a Sunday card, actually. So I'll be doing probably the Monday for Prague as well. But keep an eye out for the Bellator predictions. They're going to be on the next couple of days, I reckon. So keep an eye out for them. Until next time, thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe. And until next week for the UFC, I will see you all then. Enjoy the card.